Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Hope that you're doing well. Today we're going to be talking about clone fragrances of Jean Paul Gaultier fragrances. So every fragrance we talk about today is a clone of a JPG scent. And this is going to cover pretty much all of the most popular men's fragrances by Jean Paul Gaultier. There are a couple of really well-known clones that I'm leaving out of today's video, but I will bring them up in the video. That way they're at least featured in some way so that you'll know about them if you don't for some reason. But I wanted to keep this just pretty short and simple and to 5, so that's why those ones are left out. But like I said, I'll bring them up anyway. So it's kind of 5, but not exactly 5, but whatever. All of these are gonna be linked in the description. Feel free to check them out down there. And let's get it kicked off with this one. This is from Maison Alhambra, and this is Glacier Le Noir. Obviously, this is a clone of Le Male Le Parfum, in case you couldn't tell by the color scheme going on right here. See, look. There's also this clone of Le Male Le Parfum, which is Essentia La Homme Le Parfum, which is even more obvious what that's cloning. But this one I think is not quite as good as this one. So between the two, if I could choose just one, it'd be this guy right here. But be aware that there is this also in case you wanted to check this one out as well. So as I said, this is a clone of Le Male Le Parfum. It's a very, very well done clone as well. You can tell immediately when you spray this on that it is quite close to Le Male Le Parfum. One thing that I would point out as far as the difference between this and that, other than the obvious difference in the bottle styles, is that this one is a little bit sweeter. More of like an almost fruity sweetness off the top as compared to the OG. It's not a massive difference, but it is a difference. And this one has a little more push to it, lasts a little bit longer, projects a little bit further, has more of a density in the base of the fragrance that you can pick up as it dries down as compared to the clone. But that is kind of splitting hairs to an extent. They are, like I said, really similar. It's not that these are drastically different. And when I say that this one has a little more push to it, it's not that this is really weak and this is really strong or anything. It's just when you compare them side by side, this one lasts a little longer. So Glacier Le Noir from Maison Alhambra kicking things off. I think out of all of the affordable Le Male Le Parfum clones right now, that this one is the best. So that's the one I would go for if I were just gonna scoop one up. But again, this one is also out there. Before we hop to the next fragrance, here are a bunch of codes that you can use to save money at a bunch of different websites. So if you shop at any of these sites, use those codes, save yourself between 10 and 20% off at each of the different sites, depending on which site it is and which code you use. All right, next fragrance. This is from Dumont Paris. This is Nitro Green. So there's also Nitro Red. That's the most popular in the Nitro line. Nitro Red is kind of a mix of Invictus and Baccarat Rouge 540, but this is a clone of Ultramall, and it has the floppy nitro thing. How fun, yay. So this is where I'm gonna mention one of those fragrances that I talked about at the beginning that's technically not in the video, but I'm going to include it this way anyway. That would be 9 PM. 9 PM is really well known for being the go-to Ultramall fragrance, the Ultramall alternative clone, whatever you wanna call it. But this one has not been talked about quite as much, so I figured I'd include this one as well, since that one is gonna be more well known. This one is not as well known, so I figured it would just keep it more interesting, I guess. Now, one thing that you need to know about Nitro Green, when you first get this in, spray it on, go ahead, but then let the fragrance sit for a little while, for at least a few days. And I know people hear that sometimes with clone fragrances and they're like, nah, it can't make that much of a difference, can it? And the answer is, yes, it can. So with this one, when I first sprayed it on, opened up the package, hit it on a tester strip, I went, it's not really a great Ultramall alternative. It's not got that sweetness there, it's just more powdery. Then I let it sit, came back to it legitimately, just like 3 days. All that sweetness is there now. So when you spray it on, the opening, very, very appealing. Very sweet, very inviting. It has that Ultramall feel to it all throughout. You have that little bit of warmth underneath. You know, that vanilla comes through, that pear. It's all here. It's done very, very well. You can find this for a really good price online, not too expensive, smells fantastic, and is a really lesser known, but just as good alternative to Ultramall as 9 PM. So Nitro Green, throw that one in the mix. And you can actually find the whole Dumont line at theperfumebox.com, where you can use the code GENTSCENTS for 10% off. My bottle's very floppy. You see this? Look at that. Let's try this one. Ooh, solid. All right, let's keep it moving. Up next is this one, Mandarin Sky from Armaf, Odyssey Mandarin Sky. I've talked about this one a number of different times on different videos. That is a clone of Scandal. This is an extremely well done clone of Scandal. At Joma Shop, which is where I bought my bottle, it's 35 bucks now, at least last time I checked, but it is available at other discounters for less. So I would shop around on this one. When I bought it, I feel like it was 20, maybe 25, but it was one of those, 20 or 25, and the price has risen on Joma Shop since I bought it. So yeah, 25 I think is gonna be the sweet spot here. Anything under that is a steal. This is about dead on with Scandal. It's super close. So if you like Scandal, that sweetness that it has, that warmth that it has, this is gonna get the job done just as well as the real deal for a good amount less. Now, the packaging doesn't really reflect how the fragrance smells. You know, it's called Mandarin Sky. It's got, as I've said, these Dolphins colors, Miami Dolphins colors, the orange and blue, very bright. So when you see that, you probably are gonna think, oh, it'll be really sweet and fresh, you know, like a spring, summertime fragrance, but no, it's just Scandal. And while technically Scandal does have Mandarin orange in there, I don't know too many people who would smell that and go, you know what, this is a fantastic Mandarin orange fragrance. That's really all I'm pulling from this, Mandarin orange, wow. No. Still yet though, this stuff is fantastic, very well done, great quality. Packaging is actually pretty nice. I like the color scheme. It just doesn't maybe necessarily match the fragrance perfectly. And it says that it is a limited edition. How limited? Who knows? 5 years from now, it could still be here or it could be gone within the year. Don't know.
I don't know, man.
It could just be marketing fluff. It could be legitimate. Who knows? Next up, we have this one, which is Jean Gustave Homme Amaze, which looks quite similar to this one, doesn't it? So Jean Gustave Amaze is a clone of Le Beau, and this one is very well done. This is quite close. It kind of actually sits between Le Beau and Le Beau Le Parfum a little bit, but it's gonna give you those vibes, those Le Beau vibes, that tropical sweetness, really easy to wear, good compliment puller, nice performance, all things considered here, and the presentation, quite close, quite similar. I know that I said I would pick this probably over this, right? And I would pick this over this. They win one, and they win one. This is by Fragrance World. Jean Gustave Amaze is Fragrance World. This, of course, is Maison Alhambra, which is Lattafa. That said, this is not awful, and this is not awful. It's just, I think that there are some strengths here over this one that would make me choose that one. This has more of a creaminess to it, which is going to bring it a little closer in line to Le Beau, again, kind of between Le Beau and Le Beau Le Parfum, whereas this one has, to me, a little more almost candied sweetness the way it comes across. Now, of course, some people are going to find this one more appealing, and if you do, more power to you. So do be aware that this is also out there, Glacier Bold, in case you wanted a different alternative over this. Jean Gustave Homme Amaze is a really nice Le Beau alternative. All right, before we get to the last one, the other clone that I wanted to bring up that's not officially in today's video is Cuba Gold. So I have that fragrance, but it's put up somewhere. I don't remember exactly where because I put it in its box when I moved here, which was years ago, and did not take it out. So it's stored somewhere. And it's actually a pretty decent clone of the original Le Male and is also insanely cheap, $9, something like that. You can get a bottle for. Yeah, it is dirt cheap. Crazy cheap. What's funny is for the longest time on Fragrantica, and I'm assuming it's still there. Actually, it does not look like it's still there, but for the longest time on Fragrantica, it said that Cuba Gold was released in the 70s. And so some people would see that and they would legitimately think that Cuba Gold came out in the 70s and that then Francis Kirkjohn was like, you know what? I'm gonna clone Cuba Gold and make Le Male. Never mind that you cannot find a bottle of Cuba Gold from the 70s because it wasn't released in the 70s, but you would still get people that would get worked up about it because they just saw that one like factual mistake on Fragrantica and would be like, that is the fragrance that came first. Even though Cuba is a cheap clone house, I know that they actually came up with that, and then Francis Kirkjohn ripped them off and made Le Male, and I'm gonna take that to the grave. I can't tell you how many times I saw arguments between people online where somebody would be like, no dude, Cuba Gold is a clone house, and they cloned Le Male on the cheap. And then you would have somebody go, Don't think so, brother. You gotta get your facts straight. I went on Fragrantica, and you know what? It said it was released in the 70s.
You got it.
And so I believe that. And then people would be like, well, where's the evidence? And they'd go, Fragrantica. It says it was released in the 70s. That's all the evidence I need. Thankfully, Fragrantica has corrected that and removed the year of release for Cuba Gold. But yes, if you want an extremely cheap alternative to Le Male, Cuba Gold is a good one. Man, as he going down the rabbit hole. All right, last but not least, it is Posh Omega from Fragrance World. This is a clone of Le Male Essence de Parfum. Not Le Male de Parfum, Essence de Parfum, which was a sweet leather fragrance, some similarities to CH Privé, and is discontinued and difficult to find now. This one is a little bit interesting in the sense that the initial blast can smell a little underwhelming. When you first spray this guy on, if you immediately go in for a whiff, not great. Not awful, but not great. But the magic here happens as it starts to dry down. This one is one that it's kind of odd in a way because when you first spray it on, it smells a little aroma chemically in the sense of just being airy, right? You can pick up some spice, a little sweetness, but it doesn't feel very dense when you first spray it on. It's kind of light. But what happens as it dries down is the fragrance just opens up, becomes much more full-bodied, the spices come alive, the sweetness pops out, that leather comes out, and it ends up smelling way better. So this is one of those times with a fragrance where, yeah, maybe you want to let it sit for a few days, you know, spray it, let it sit, and then come back to it, but it can still trick you where the opening is kind of so-so, and so you may smell it immediately and be like, nah, But then if you let it dry just a little while, not even like an hour or anything, just 10, 15 minutes, and then come back to it, you'll be like, oh, sacre bleu. It has changed, and then it's much nicer. And then it is way closer to Essence de Parfum once you do let it just creep out of that opening. So be aware of that one. That may not be one that immediately smacks you across the face and grabs your attention, but if you let that just settle, 10 times better. So there we go. Some clones of JPG fragrances and a couple others mentioned that are not officially part of the list. And also a couple other ones that I didn't plan on mentioning, but that I mentioned anyway. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.